Okay, well, it was the late 80s. I was living in Berkeley. I was politically active. And I was coming out early in the morning to People's Park to protest the fact that the university was going to build a volleyball court, of all things, on People's Park. I know it sounds innocuous. The thing about People's Park is, rewind back to the late 60s. Ronald Reagan was governor. There was a bohemian type of community in Berkeley that the state government wasn't too fond of, and so they happened to own this block that had a lot of the bohemians living in it, right in the heart of Berkeley, and they didn't really like that community, so they evicted everybody and tore down all the buildings, just left rubble there. So anyway, there's kids in this neighborhood, and it was an eyesore and not safe. And then one day, a Berkeley resident running a dress shop, his girlfriend at the time, said, "Hey, let's make it into a park." Now, I wasn't around until years and years later, but this whole story really had an impact on me at the time, because until that point, it hadn't really occurred to me that underneath this ubiquitous layer of concrete in the city is the earth. All you need to let it sprout up again and be like nature is to break up and take off the concrete, and it's right there, ready. So that's what they did, and they started giving away food at the park, and they planted a bunch of plants, and they really made it into quite a nice park. And the campus has quarreled with them for decades and decades. I mean, at the time, Ronald Reagan called out the National Guard. It was a huge mess. But they were never able to annihilate the park. And building this volleyball court was about trying to get a toehold in there again, and maybe trying to gentrify it, maybe trying to take it away from the people. So we weren't for that. And as I had gotten dropped off, I was walking down there, and I'd seen a bunch of the riot cops, collecting in an alley. But still, it was shocking when they came out around the corner in these big, long lines with their helmets and their shields. And they came into the park, and they broke up into little shorter segment, 2-line groups. And they went around and they sat in the park. They stood, rather, in the park there for a second. It was very ominous. It was meant to be. Then, every once in a while, one of the lines would go, hop, 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 and they'd start marching off. And they just cut right through the crowd, and the crowd would divide. And that's what they were doing. They were just cutting across the crowd, just dividing it up. And they were doing a really good job, too. And even though it seemed a little bit random, they had a strategy, and they were securing the area. They were securing the way in for the bulldozers that, we intended to lock arms and block. And at one point, the line, they had a complete line across the park at one point that was staying still. And, but there was free movement in the park, and I was just kind of going around behind that. And I saw a police officer with his camcorder filming me. So that had the intended chilling effect. But, I didn't leave the park or anything, but it did get my attention. And then I noticed some people were walking up the street towards the dorms. I decided to see what was going on up there. I knew that they tended to hold people that had been arrested up there. There's a dorm basketball court with like these 60-foot chain link fences. When I first moved to Berkeley, I'm like, why do they need a fence that high around a basketball court? But anyway, that was why. But they weren't using that today. But they did have a big, like, Greyhound-sized paddy wagon, and then it was parked in the parking lot there. And as I was walking on the street, there was a big breaking glass sound, and a bottle just exploded in the street right near me. And I kind of ran around, panicked, what's going on? And then I realized the bottle had been thrown, which, I thought was uncool, very uncool. And then right then also, a row of these riot cops were running up the street towards the paddy wagon, towards the area that I'd been following some people up to. And the sergeant or whatever he was in the head of this line pointed right at me and was like, "I know what you've been up to." I think he might have said he was going to get me later, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just, that was definitely the point. So I was getting a little bit, we obviously had not been able to block the block the bulldozers. I had done my civil disobedience. I was feeling a little threatened. So I crossed underneath the parking structure out to the other side, the side on which that paddy wagon was parked, and I was just kind of standing there, wondering what I should do, if I should go back down to the park or what. Just hanging out, not much going on. I could see, some of the action about a block and a half down the road at the park. You could see the paddy wagon over there. There's some Berkeley guy up there. It looked like he was eating pickles or something, and just hanging. And a couple police officers were walking up the other side of the road, and I didn't give them too much mind. I mean, I had felt threatened, but I was now out of it. I figured if I was going to get arrested, it would be, in the middle of something going on or whatnot. So I didn't really pay them any mind. I didn't notice them. I took note, and I'm looking down at the action down there at the park, and then I hear a voice say, "They're coming to get you. Run!" And as I turned around, sure enough, when the cops had gotten there, was a male and a female officer. When they had gotten right across the street from me, because they were just not even looking at me, they were just walking up the street. But when they got right there, they turned, just boom, and started running for me. But by that time, I was running, and I heard the cop behind me, ching, ching, all this stuff was beating against him. And I ran through this whole dorm complex. Berkeley's dorms off the campus, right next to the campus. And I had to run through some bushes. I ran along this, behind some plants, and I got to the end where there was like a 12-foot drop. I had to leap off. Then I'm out on the other sidewalk, a block over. I see the cop coming out down the street, down the steps behind me. I had to dive in front of a bus. It had not started going. It was just pulling off, so it actually wasn't as dangerous as it sounds. Cut the cop off, and I just kept running and running and running until I couldn't run anymore. I ran deep into the Berkeley campus, and I just couldn't run anymore. And it was like, if they're still behind me, they catch me. And I sat down. Didn't seem like anybody was there with me, except for that guy that had been eating pickles. The guy that had called out to run, he was right there, and he sat down there right next to me on the bench. And that's how I met Tex.